This is Signal and Noise, bringing clarity to data, tech, and AI.
Welcome back to Signal and Noise with my co-host Rio Longacre. I am Brett House. We are, for those that have not listened before, a No BS media franchise decoding data, tech, and AI, and the marketing transformations that actually matter. Today, we are thrilled to speak with Dale Renner, the CEO of Redpoint Global. He's been in the CDP space, customer data platform space, since before it was called a CDP. I think it might have been called a DMP, or there were other solutions in market.
Other acronyms.
Yeah, other acronyms, tag managers, all sorts of things that evolved into this space. He's seen the category emerge, mature, fragment, and now collide head on with AI. Dale, great to have you on the show. Thanks for finally joining us, and would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Great to be here. Thank you. Well, my background is I was 21 years at Accenture. I was global managing partner of CRM, and had there were about 5,000 people in the group practicing CRM or doing CRM work, and about $1.5 billion in revenue. I was then I left and became the CEO of a company where we built our own in-memory computing platforms and had about 20 billion records on people in the United States. Worked under the FCRA and Graham Leach Bliley to basically create a picture of a person for background checks, law enforcement. Got involved in Homeland Security after 9/11. Sold that company to LexisNexis. Then I was got involved with a company in the UK, and that was back on the commercial side. It was more of an MSP. We wrote our own selection software, and that basically sat on top of some data engines, data quality, and identity resolution engines, focused mainly on wireless and banks. And then 2 years later, sold that to Experian in the UK, and then started Redpoint in 2006.
That was definitely early. Yeah, that was before. I mean, I think I started first doing work where customers were asking for CDPs, maybe 2014, 2015-ish. I think it started emerging. So you were definitely early to the game. And
you're not trying to call me old, are you?
Well, seasoned, right?
What did you call yourself when you first launched?
I am a seasoned person.
Yeah. What did you call yourself when you first launched? It wasn't, because I don't think the category even existed.
No, it didn't. It didn't. In fact, when we launched in 2006, we didn't have any. We had to wait for 2 years to get the software guys out of the lockup over in the UK, and so we just kind of fell back on our consulting backgrounds, and we were just working in the customer space, and we got lucky. Started in May, sold our first deal in May, and in August we landed AIG and started working with them, and worked with those guys for 20 years or whatever, and then things just kind of took their place. And in 2008, we started March of 2008. We started developing software. We went into the market at the end of 2010. I acquired a company at the end of 2011 that gave me my data engine. We focused on what you guys would think of as in the olden days, we called it campaigns, right? And that gave me two of my three pieces, and then the insight piece. We created, we adopted machine learning, started working with machine learning probably back in, I don't even know, 2015, 2016, something like that.
Yeah.
But Redpoint was founded on a principle of I always call it the three ball swirls, and my marketing people went crazy because they thought it was, I don't know what, didn't work, but it was the virtuous cycles of a virtuous cycle of mastering your data, driving insights from those data, taking action on those insights, every action, more data, better insights. That was the virtuous cycle of those capabilities.
Yep.
So that was my vision for the company. And when we went into the market, when we finally got all of our three components in one form or another, I called it the convergent marketing platform. And I actually still have contracts in place that refer to that. We've done a pretty good job of maintaining relationships with our customers over the years. Anyway, so it was this convergent marketing platform, but it didn't really roll off my tongue very well. Back then, you had multi-channel campaign management at Gartner. We had cross-channel
You
campaign.
could have gone with CMP, right? But I guess that consent management kind of mixes up with that too.
Well, we probably tried that. Who knows, right? But in there's maybe too much history there. I don't know, but it's kind of my evolution has been interesting because I actually have to go all the way back to 1993 and I'll come back to the point that I was just going to explain. But 1993, I was friends with Martha Rogers, so Peppers and Rogers, who you guys probably don't even remember Peppers and Rogers, but they wrote the book on one-to-one marketing, right?
One-to-one marketing, yeah.
Right. And so, and the whole premise of that book was really about, or the premise of their thinking was about getting share of customer versus share of market. So it was everything about the customer. And the idea was work with your top 20% of your customers to expand inside those customers, as opposed to going out and trying to get mass market. Now, there's all kinds of strategies, there's the Porter stuff and all those other kinds of things. And I know Michael Porter from way back and
the MBA class.
But we actually I built a product called Customer Service Direct when I was at Accenture, and it was based on the principles of one-to-one marketing. And we actually generated $500 million of consulting revenues over that little package that we built over, and it was back on Power Builder, and we had to deal with the memory leaks and all that kind of crap. But I always liked that. I like those principles, and that's what I built Redpoint on. Was that concept of how do you help companies get share of customer versus thinking about acquisition and all those things. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. We have clients who use our platform for that. But so when we came, so now I'll come back to what I was saying. So when we did this thing, to me it was this convergence of these capabilities. The problem that I had, though, is that who do I talk to about that? Because Gartner had data quality, and they had multi-channel campaign management, and they had all these different pieces, right? And what I was doing was swimming, I guess.
They still haven't figured it out.
Right. I was swimming against the tide because it was this idea, no, you got to have all these capabilities. So in 2013, I actually paid David Rabb, who at that time was focused mainly on data warehousing. I paid him $10,000 to write a report on, and I spent time with David on this customer data platform idea, and I've never really I've never enjoyed my experience with analysts, right? But one thing I did learn, right, is
They're definitely not pay to play, though, right?
Put yourself on it. Put yourself on a chart, and people will come, right?
Yeah, they do.
And so I asked him to just rank me at the top of the chart on the CDPs, and it was like Lattice and a bunch of these companies, and Notice, and a bunch of these guys that have been acquired or long ago gone. A few of them are still around, but the report, I should send you guys the report. You get a kick out.
I'd love to see it. Yeah,
I'll send it to you. So I spent this, and I funded the company for Redpoint for the first 6 years, and foolish me, I didn't pay myself, because why would I pay myself with my money to only pay taxes? That didn't make any sense, did it? So I thought it was the biggest waste of $10,000 ever, because nobody called, and I pushed this. We pushed this thing out, and we waited and waited. In 2015, early 2015, got a call from Microsoft. And it was Microsoft, the Azure guys, and they were working with a company called.
Well, and this is when cloud had really started taking off around this time too.
Right. So Azure they were selling to Keurig, right? Green Mountain Keurig, and so they called and they said, hey, we're working with this company called Keurig, and they want this thing called a CDP, a customer data platform, and they showed us this report, and you guys are the leader in that report, in the CDP space. And so I said, sure, we would love to talk to them. And so in June of 2015, we closed what I believe is the first CDP deal ever. And the buyer of that is a fellow named Ryan Scott. He was the vice president there. And we sold a CDP. And that is how CDP came about.
Well, you heard it here, folks.
Yeah, so
the first CDP deal ever.
This is where it came from.
We'll have to validate that offline.
We want to see that report, but that's a cool piece. Cool piece of history.
I'll even show you the contract with the dates. I'm happy to do that because you know I don't tell that story often, but it's kind of a fun story. I mean, it is you know it's just kind of a fun story.
Yeah, no, it's a cool story. So Dale, just to cut you off for a second here. So I mean, that's awesome, and that's kind of the thing what we wanted to dig in here, because there's like the CDP category. There's been a lot of talk about it recently. We had Matthew Niederberger on our podcast about a month ago, Brett, where we talked about the recent Magic Quadrant report. Circling back to Analyst, right? We've had. I've written a couple articles that went kind of semi-viral recently with like the 4 paths of the CDP, and then like where's the category going, right? It's been under a lot of pressure. First, you had composability, and which kind of broke the category apart. You've had prices have kind of collapsed. I mean, there's been a lot of change and a lot of flux, which not necessarily a bad thing. MarTech's always changing, but you could even argue the category is kind of fragmenting and falling apart, right? As like, how do we even compare and contrast like a monolithic like Salesforce Data Cloud or Adobe Experience Platform to like a high touch, which is, just as reverse ETL, right? With very light identity resolution. So it's like, how do you even compare and contrast or compare apples to apples at this point? It's the categories become sprawling, it's fractured. So like the history here is really interesting. So we'd love to maybe get your perspective on it. And help us understand the narrative and maybe think about where, based on the past, where's the industry going?
Yeah. Well, this is just my view, but the mistake, I think, in CDP, the way I thought about it, all right, I hate to make, I think I made one mistake, right? But no, I think the mistake in my thinking on it at the time is that, I read the same nonsense you guys read from IBM back in 2017, 2018 about how the CMO was going to have the budget power and the CIO was going to take a step down. And the
CMO's got a bigger tech budget than the CIO or
exactly,
CTO.
Right? Well, the problem with the CDP, as in my vision, I'll come back to other people. But in my vision, the problem is there are multiple different buyers. Because you have, we tend to sell to technical people, and when we do really well when we're selling to quasi-technical buyers. Now, I'm even on the marketing side, because remember, marketers used to be very technical, right? They wrote SQL, they wrote to do selections. They didn't have all the software. Unica, right? You basically wrote code to do selections inside of Unica. So, but that has changed over time. Now marketers, they're looking for the easy button, right? And what I think,
being required to become Claude Code and
I mean, they don't have to do that, but they want somebody to do that.
Yeah.
So I think what happened with CDP is that there were too many buyers and too many people that came at the problem from different angles. So the IT guys, what are they worried about? Well, they've got the marketers and they're banging on them about having this great data. They have to worry about security. They have to work, with their constraints of their architectures and their databases. Now we got cloud. Now you got budgets. You got all these things that they have to worry about. Marketers don't care about that, right? The marketers would be happy to, do all kinds of selections and let me see, I'm looking for 100,000. Oh, I got 250,000, or I got 2 million. Oh, I got to run this thing again. In the meantime, I'm paying based on consumption, right? And this thing's running up a bill. Well, that's not my problem. That's an IT problem. Yeah. On the other hand, you got the marketers, like I said, they're looking for, that's why you look at all these silos and back. I don't know what it is today because I kind of have lost interest in it. But at one time, there was like 13 different marketing packages that marketers use and all those kinds of things. And there's overlaps and had to be rationalized, blah, 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 blah. But it didn't matter.
So Dale, it's like the tension between IT and marketing ops and
right.
And
it's all
maybe
that.
legal, right? It's all there, right?
Yeah, there's a collaboration of all those people. Thank you.
You're selling something for marketers, but like like, let's face it, like they're not doing this without IT because the data is going to come from somewhere. Someone's got, I mean, IT, they are the stewards of the company's data, right? That's like,
Well,
they're
that's
the
right.
ones who are accountable for it.
Yep. And in my experience, I always tell my sales guys, if IT is not involved in this, don't do it. Let's not do it because it's going to be a problem, because you got to
Well, that
get
was a
anxious.
problem with like the SaaS sprawl, right? Where marketers, there was a period where I think they started doing that, right? They started like around that time. Oh, let's get a credit card. We'll do this. We'll get, we'll get an ESP. We'll get a CRM. But then that's a problem, right? In IT, I think IT, what I've seen it kind of the pendulum swing both ways, where marketing will have more purview to do these things, and suddenly IT says, hold on, like we can't have this. There's too much sprawl. We need more consolidation. We're going to get in trouble, maybe even with these privacy laws. So I know it cut you off.
No, that's right. No problem. But I think the second, there's probably a couple different issues. That was my shortcoming in thinking about that, thinking about who the buyer was going to be and how that would work. And so we had to learn to work through that. The second one is the disappointment, which is, one of my guys was at an event recently, and we were just talking about it, the other day, and he said, remember that event that was over in the UK, and he was sitting in the audience, and the speaker said, how many people have a CDP? Right? And a whole bunch of people raised their hand, the vast majority. And okay, how many people have a second CDP? A whole bunch of hands stayed up.
Yeah.
Right? And so the point is, the disappointment, I think, in CDP, which adds to the problem.
There's a lot of that, yeah.
Is that people don't understand what they're buying. I don't mean that in any kind of, they're not smart people or whatever. My point is, I'm a marketer, and I want to do something where I want to do hyper personalization for a term, right? Okay, great. Do you care how good the result is? Well, of course I do. Well, then you got to have really good data. Do you have really good data? Well, that's not my problem. No, but it is your problem, because if your strategy is that you're going to drive hyper-personalization on an omni-channel basis, how are you going to do that?
Or even defining what hyper-personalization is. And people throw these terms out, right? We've never even achieved one-to-one marketing, right? I don't even know if you need to, right?
But we worked at Newstar. At Newstar we worked at Action IQ, and their challenge was they're trying to do activation at scale, but they didn't have the identity resolution play. And so we came in with the identity resolution data play to ensure that they were normalizing and deduplicating and hygiening their data. But to your point, the CDPs had multiple definitions.
But wasn't that really from an ad tech standpoint and driving in, going from anonymous and driving in? So what about all the first party data? How is that going to get used? And what are you doing to do that? Right. And so then you get into identities, and we work with a number of the Fortune 50 companies, Fortune 20 companies. And, when they do identities, they're not looking to do some hard key match on some email address that's been
hashed,
right? And so we both know who that is. And so that's how they do it. They want to know the identity, the household, who's in the household, and they want to know the connection to the business. So you have a multi-entity ID. Well, guess what? There ain't anybody in the market better than us at doing that. Now, if you don't need that, if you're just pushing ad tech, well, then maybe you don't need all that stuff. That's my point. It isn't that makes us bad and someone else good, or the other way around. It means we're not right for that problem if that's all you want to solve. Yeah. On the other hand, if you want to solve the problem I just outlined, then probably there are very few people that can actually do that. But if you bought their thing thinking that they're going to do that, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah. Well, no, and you made that point in your LinkedIn post about a financial services company, I think, that you were selling into, and they actually had two CDPs that were handling different use cases, and you came in for the identity resolution use case, and one other.
Segmentation.
Segmentation scheme and activation. Whereas the other CDP was doing the same thing. So suddenly you get this bifurcation or more than just a bifurcation of what the category actually is. And you're kind of, I think you start to move further away from the actual client use cases. And you're saying, hey, we're solving these hard problems that this other category player that's also labeled CDP cannot solve. So why are you both called CDPs?
Well, yeah, I've
Right.
seen that too, Brett. Like I've seen like people bringing a CDP just for segmentation or bringing it just for, just for activation. And like, so like, I mean, a category, it's hard to even say it's one category anymore, but Dale, one thing I do want to ask about too. So around the time you referenced, like we were doing a lot of work with vendor selections and a lot of healthcare clients, especially. You guys are coming up a lot. Like we even did 3 or 4 implementations with you guys. And then like, then you kind of fell off. Like what happened? What did the market change? Did you misread the market? Was the category shift? Love to maybe talk about, I think between like 2016 to 2020, like I think things changed a lot. It did seem to impact you guys. Love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, well, I think probably I got to think about this because in 20 when did COVID happen? 2020?
2020, yeah.
Yeah, right at the beginning of 2020.
Okay. So
Yep.
2020, 2021, and 2022 were our best growth years ever.
Okay.
And it was all about digital transformation. Remember that?
Yep.
Everybody
Oh,
was
yeah.
doing
Yeah.
digital.
Everyone needed a CDP all of a sudden because everyone
Needed to work through multiple channels, didn't it?
Yep.
And how do you do that? Because if you think about it, that was kind of the third problem, by the way, which is organizational, which is back in those days, email guys were measured by hard soft bounces, opens, and click-throughs, right? And so
Yep.
they're still measured that way. So what does that have to do with personalization or optimizing the relationship or whatever? Nothing. So I think that probably in those teen years, I think we had sold to a number of big companies. And I think honestly, we probably were just consumed by that. And we still are working, like right now, we're working with a bunch of big companies that have our software and we're part of their whole AI strategy.
And were you during that period, were you making any platform product, either re-platforming or technology changes, or was it
Yeah.
you were just was it a positioning play? Because I'll agree with Rio is that Redpoint wasn't particularly visible in the CDP market from my vantage point. We were partnering a ton of people at Newstar, like I mentioned, Action IQ, RIP, Treasure Data, a whole bunch of these guys. I don't think I ever saw Redpoint come to the surface, and so was it a category specificity that like the high governance categories like financial services and healthcare? Was it product pivoting that you were
I know
doing?
you've hosted a more of a hosted solution versus cloud for a while too. So yeah, curious to hear your take on that.
Yeah. So a bunch of things. So we've lived through multiple technology transitions, right? Because remember when we started building, web UIs were not being created for anything complex. It was kind of like, web 1.0, maybe 1.50 or something. So you couldn't do anything complex and you couldn't debug anything like a marketing application. That was very difficult. So we did that all through client server. And so, that gave us the engines to be able to process, because we went after enterprise. So we went after scale and performance and complexity. That's what we were focused on, right? Interesting companies having interesting users who are trying to do hard things.
What was the average deal size? I mean, I guess it's all like, because at that time Segment started taking off. They claimed to have the biggest CDP market share, but they were doing really small deals, right? And I think that kind of market's even collapsed now recently. I mean, like I think High Touch, I heard rumors they were doing deals for like $25,000, right? So, so curious, like if you're focused on enterprise, these must be bigger, meatier engagements, right?
They were multi-million-dollar engagements, software deals, right? And so we had a very high, we call it ACV, because we were not a SaaS. So ARR is something you would see in SaaS. We had annual contracts or multi-year contracts. You pay annual in advance. That's how our deal structures were. And but then what we had to do is we had to figure out. And the other thing is that we work a lot in regulated industry. Yeah. So we had we do retail work. In fact, in IDC's latest they called it, I think it was CDP for retail. We're ranked a leader in that, right? But we do really well in regulated industries because there's a lot of complexity. You need to be very specific about who these people are. You need to be, you've got SOC 2 type 2 requirements. You got HIPAA compliant. Yep, you got all those things going on, and
a lot of the early CDPs were not HIPAA compliant. I remember, I think Adobe never was. They wouldn't sign BAAs. Like it definitely
and
healthcare
we've
is
got
its
them
own
all over
unique
the place,
beast.
right? And we've got them all over the place.
And to pass all those tests and go through that sort of diligence process with these companies, and we did it with financial services at Newstar, it became a moat for us because it was so laborious and time consuming and people heavy to actually just get through that process. And once you were approved, you just had you had a little bit of defensive ability against your competition.
To your point, I mean, we actually have clients come to us and say, "Hey, we want to work with this one company, right? Will you contract with them because there's no way they're ever going to make it through our process."
Yeah. It's going to take too much time. They probably won't pass.
But now with the CISO people, right? Now you can go through a 9-month sales cycle, a 10-month sales cycle, and you think you're all done, and then
at the 1 yard line, right?
Then the CISO people,
but you're not,
and you're not, and you got it. You're going now. You're jumping through all the hoops again. So what I would say is that in those 2016 to kind of 2019ish. We had done some very big deals, and and it was hard. I mean, we
all
took them
consuming,
a lot, right? Yeah, and the other thing too is, back I can't remember when they did the when did they do the multi-channel marketing hub at Gartner? You guys remember
that time?
Yeah, it was.
So we were a leader.
2015, 2016.
Yeah, we were a leader in that category, right? And it was.
But I thought that category made no sense. They had like totally disparate companies. That Adobe was in there, Salesforce, like I don't know, it's like
Xcelate, our data management platform. I was talking to Andrew Frank on like a daily basis, and as he was running that, and you're right, it was like I couldn't make sense of it, even though we were applying for it. I just saw it as an opportunity to be recognized, sort of in the
right. There was that, then there was the CRM, space. Right?
Yeah.
So, Dale, this begs the question: like, are the analyst reports are they valuable still? Like, do you think I mean, it drives business to your point, but are they is it worth it? Like, what do you think?
Well, no, I don't know if it does drive business. I think what it does is, I think it bifurcates the market, and maybe there's even more separation in the market. I mean, you've got the big guys, right? And I'm not going to accuse anybody of manipulating process and all that kind of stuff, but
because that doesn't happen.
Yeah. There's a way to game the system. We've reverse engineered it.
The same guys are still always in the in the way far right. And the thing is, I was a consultant. A lot of I know how this stuff works. I don't know everything, but we work with all kinds of partners. All the big GSIs. They're all partners of ours, and so I hear all the horror stories. But big brands like to buy from big brands until that big brand can't satisfy the need.
Yeah.
Then you get an opportunity. So when I look at and I have a different issue with Gartner than I have about these reports generally. Okay.
Yeah.
My issue.
I really want to hear this, by the way.
My issue is I just think they don't understand. I think they've lost the people who the analysts who used to be there or in those roles. Those people they dug down, they ask you hard questions, they wanted to see stuff. I've spent 3 years now trying to explain to the Gartner people how data plays in this. But what do? They think of it as data collection and unifying a unified profile. Okay, fine. How are you unifying that profile? What is that? Is it does it go back to an email match? Is that what you're doing? But then what's
a deterministic model based on email? Yeah, I mean, that's very different than some of it's like a probabilistic model where you're using fuzzy matching, right?
Right. So when I started my argument with those guys probably back in the late teens, 2018, 2019, because my argument was always, because we're data first. That's what we are. We come at this.
You call yourself a data readiness platform.
Data, exactly. We always think about data. And so my point to them was when they were doing the multi-channel campaign management matrix, then I said, how do we get to be a leader? Right. And the answer is always the same, which is, well, that shouldn't be your goal. Your goal should be to do. I said, no, how do I get to be a leader? well, it's like you have to have more, that Marketo stuff, because Marketo was on the chart back
I
then.
remember
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
marketing
And so,
automation
and
platforms.
so
yeah.
I said, so content, content, that's what you need is content. I said, no, we're not content. We don't do content. They're
Yeah.
stupid. Why would I
Well,
go
and
do
the fact
content?
that they conflated you with a marketing automation platform
Well,
doesn't
but
make any sense at all.
I said, but what I can do that they can't do is create context. I deliver context, and you can use that context across the enterprise, whether you use my interaction products or someone else's campaign products. You got to have context, or content is a waste of money. That was my
Yeah.
argument, right?
Yeah.
Well, it fell on deaf ears with those guys, but IDC understands it.
Yeah.
Spark Group, that these people, they understand that. So I think that my problem started on the CDP thing several years ago, because they always told me, no, we value the data thing, but then the charts would show up and then data would get short shrift. And so I would work it again. And I finally just got to the point where I said, I feel like this is a complete waste of my time. You guys, we've offered 3 times to do a deep dive on our software over the past 12 months. This is before this last evaluation. And you guys don't want to do that. So I don't know how you're evaluating anything anymore. I don't understand it. And I don't understand the definition, because it feels like it's a mile wide and inch deep. And so everybody, if you can spell CDP today, you are a CDP. It's just that simple. So I said, I just don't want to do this anymore. I just think this is just a waste. We have to do these questionnaires. We have to build a demo. We do the demo remotely.
It's a couple of people's FTE's full-time job for a little while.
And it's just, and I just got fed up with it. And I'm out. I'm tagging out. And if you guys, want us to come back,
they reserve the right to cover you, whether you
they did,
opt
but
in
then
or not.
I wrote a protest letter that they were covering us, because I said, you guys didn't, how did you find out any information on us?
Yeah.
And so
they had put you in the platform. They had put you in the report.
Yeah.
But you didn't fill out the
somewhere in that
questionnaire.
quadrant, and you were like,
because I didn't participate.
yeah.
Right. And then they said to me, well, we've got public information. I said, well, that's really interesting. Can you tell me where you got the public information? Because I'm a privately held company, and you guys don't. I don't believe it. Oh, you go to your website. Yeah. So I went to the website and I said, tell me every place that Gartner went on my website. I want to know from my guys.
Yeah.
And the stuff that you would look at would be case studies. We had a ton of case studies out there, right? And the case studies, if you read a case study, you can discern from the case study what you had to do to drive the value that you're talking about. Well, they landed on the front page of the case studies, but did not look at one case study.
Yeah, so, there's nothing you can tell from a case study that's sort of in a slide or on a website.
Plus, even the way their questionnaires work, like we had, like when we talked to a bunch of people about that, like there are people who, like, the relationship you had with them previously, Dale, where you were helping advise them on what goes in a questionnaire. I mean, like, these questionnaires are designed a certain way to get a certain response, right? Apparently the last one, they had questions about like agent force and things like that, which, I think it's not surprising Salesforce ended up in the far right, right? If you have questions that are designed a certain way. So again, not blaming anyone, but I think these people, to your point, probably don't know the category very well. They're asking for help from vendors they're friendly with, and it's probably how the whole thing happens. But I guess, maybe looking ahead too. I mean, not to belabor the point of magic quadrants, because I think we all agree they're probably not as great as they were. But like, where are things going, right? I mean, AI is changing things. The category changed a lot with composability, right? I think it changed a lot with cloud. It changed a lot with, like, when composability broke apart identity resolution from segmentation, from activation, from analytics. I mean, we even had Dieter Berger, Brett, remember, he even said, I don't think analytics belongs in a CDP at all, right? So it's really, really evolved. Like with AI, where do you see things going? Like, what is the future of the category? What are you doing?
Yeah. Okay, good. Thanks for the question. First of all, I agree that I don't understand analytics being in the CDP either, because there are so many great analytics tools. Why wouldn't you just use the best of breed of analytics tool and feed the data? I don't get that. I don't get it. Anyway, or plop that on top of an image of in Snowflake. You would just create another segment basically of the data to use. But where we're going is this. I think that if you're in the agent piece, and there's the agent and the platform, I guess, right? I mean, it's an interesting way to look at it. It works. The platform, I think, will become a very big thing, but that's okay. I think if you're in the business, if you think your software company is going to make it building agents and having agents, I think you're wrong. I don't think that that's going to be the future. I think companies are going to build their own agents, because why would I buy a vendor's agent that kind of does what I want to do, but not quite? Why wouldn't I just build the agent? So, and we've been working with clients of ours for years where we have engines and they can build their own interface on top of our engines. So our play is all about the engines, because again, remember what we've done. We've built engines. We have a data engine that's built for scale and performance and handling all kinds of data. And I can push data any place in an enterprise, and I can receive data from any place. And I don't care if you're using Telium to do events and whatever else, it can all just get consumed, and it can all be available through the engine. And then we have an interaction.
So it would be the company. So it'd be your agent that would then would just hop across to different. It would like event data, Telium, it would grab that, then it'll take it. Okay.
We're not doing agents. No, we're working with companies right now who they've identified 6 to 8 agents, and those agents have a purpose, and those agents sit at this layer. What they want is for us, and we have this, right? We have an MCP, and that MCP then will get you into the engine that will then give you the data. So let's think about a simple campaign, how I think this will work. I'm a company of many products. I have 3% of my products churn off every couple of years because of whatever reason. Doesn't matter. And I want to know I've still got inventory. So I go out to my PIMS, right? My agent could go out to my PIMS, because I could say, I want to run a campaign, a pre-sale. I'm going to have this massive sale. I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. I'm going to have a pre-sale for my best customers. That's what I'm going to do. And so I'm going to have this agent, and this agent will be able to go out to the PIM system and say, find all of the products that have this movement or lack of movement. Then I want to go out to my data engine through the MCP and give me an audience then of all the people who would have a propensity to buy this thing. Then I want to go out to my interaction engine through MCP, and I want to be able to create segments and orchestration out of that. And then I'll push those out to the channels, right? So in effect, what's happened here is, the way I think this is going to work is, with those agents, I no longer have to worry about bringing all that data together. I can work across that, because in a big organization, that will take forever, right? People will spend a decade.
It needs to be agents. These to be agents that are created and they run that control plane by the company, right? Because that makes sense. Because they're not locked in a vendor, and they can work across through MCP. They can work across different solutions.
And that's what I think is going to happen. And then those engines, in our case, we have these engines, and that's how our biggest customers are using us for those engines. And I'm flattered that they would build something on top of our engines, because I don't.
And would you define your engines as data warehouses, and then how do they interact?
Not a data warehouse. That's just a repository. The engine has everything to do with data curation, right? Data preparation. It's, how do I get that? How do I create that golden record? So if you think about the medallion model, for example, right? I've got bronze, which is basically, that's the thing that everybody thinks that they're doing something when they dump data into a data lakehouse or whatever you want to call it, right? That's just data. You still have to curate all that data. Then there's the gold layer, which is where now I'm doing all the identities in between that silver and that gold. I'm doing the identities, the aggregations, any rules or whatever it is that I'm creating, and that data all sits there. That's what I'm getting at, is that curation and that transformation of that data. I'm not talking about data movement, data pipes. You're going to be able to, you can buy that from AWS.
But isn't that a lot of that already happening, especially with larger organizations, warehouse native, meaning you've got Snowflake, you've got Databricks, you've got native applications. We had this for identity resolution with Newstar that are built directly into that place where they manage all of their consumer data. And everything happens within that. And then you've
Well, I
got
guess it
apps
depends
that are
on
plugging into the data
where
source.
identity sits. You're saying like, so system record for data is the cloud data warehouse, but the actual identity sits in your engine.
Our engine creates the identity, because if you're Brett, to your point, all that data comes in. How are you linking Dale Renner, right?
Yeah.
His
The 75 variations of you in the digital
all those
ecosystem.
things, right? And then think about a business, right? So we work with American Express. They have tens of millions of businesses they work with. They have very complex programs. They have all kinds of credit programs that they offer to their customers. And these are smart people, right? They think about, they want to understand those businesses, and they want to, are they growing, right? And can I step them up in the programs that I do? Can I offer them more services, right? Well, if Dale Renner's running one of those businesses, it would be nice to know that Dale Renner is also an American Express card holder. It'd also be good to know that his wife has 2 American Express cards, right?
Well, so Dale, it sounds like you're saying there's identity plus there's like audience, like segmentation and audience development would also sit in this engine. Or
yep. Maybe it's 2 engines. They're 2 engines because they're different purposes, right? And you could use my engines or somebody else's engine. My point isn't that you have to use my engines, right? I mean, I would like companies to use my engines, but my point is, I think that the business of building agents, I mean, we have companies tell us right now, and we're working with a bunch of them, tell us we'll build the agents. And I've actually said to my customers, I am not in the agent building business. I think that is folly, because that would imply that somehow I know how you want to run your business. And I don't. I do think that AI is going to replace the UI. Maybe, I mean, it isn't like, I don't believe that AI is just going to replace people. You still have to have a strategy. You still have to have
orchestration,
look at it,
governance,
right? Does it make sense, and all that kind of stuff, right? But I just think that I think everybody's going to be able to build agents. That's when they're talking about this.
There's a commoditization around the agent,
and it's happening fast.
Yep,
it's happening, really fast.
Yeah, so you built something 3 months ago or even 3 weeks ago, and it could be disrupted tomorrow, right? I was actually talking to Ben Wild of Georgian, which is a big venture. They're
He's
a
been
Helium investor.
Before,
yeah, and Ben was saying that that agentic, that he, for any investment option that they have for any AI company, mostly AI investments, it's like 90% of what they invest in now. He gives them a test, and he's been with the company for 17 years, right? So he's I don't know if he's one of the co-founders of Georgian Capital.
He's head of innovation.
Yeah. But yeah, head of innovation. So he'll take 2 days, 24 to 48 hours, and if he can rebuild that solution in Claude code, he will not invest in the company. And so that's how quick the product production life cycles are. It's like companies are coming to him asking for millions of dollars of investment, but some of the stuff can be disrupted in 48 hours because you can build an MVP of the same thing, right? Do you see that as sort of a threat to kind of the fundamental, defensibility of some of your capabilities, some of CDP's capabilities in general, that some of this stuff could be MVP developed very quickly? And
yeah, I guess you have to look at everything as a threat, right? In a way, and I guess what I would say is this: I think you can build. We use Cloud Code, right?
Yeah,
because we use it. I have a mandate in my company that everybody has to use AI. If it's the marketing people, use AI for account-based marketing. I don't care. You got to use AI.
Yep.
The coders, we've been coding with this stuff for a while. We get about 75% efficiency, but it's not perfect code. Yeah. And when you get into complexity, it's a different problem, because remember, easy things, you can build easy things fast. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't build hard things with it, but it's not fast. So, if you do, let's just pretend for a minute you say, oh, I built an identity resolution product over my lunch hour. Okay, what did you match on? What you do? Well, yeah, we matched on email address. Okay, well then you're no better than everybody that does that. So,
Yeah.
right? You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it depends on what it is. But I would have to say that um, scale, performance, handling complexity, I think that that's something that not everybody needs, but the companies that need it, they need it and they will pay for it. And I want to collaborate and work with those people, those companies. Not that I won't work with smaller companies. That's not my point. But but if you go to, I would say, I think I can say this, 100% of my healthcare clients, and I would say probably the same on the financial services guys. They're very leery of AI, very leery.
Yeah.
They are hugely protective of their data, and they're very concerned about that data getting consumed by some large language model.
Well, I mean, these are slow-moving organizations. They have to be because of
Right.
regulation, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think they have a choice. The downside of making a mistake is so massive, right? In terms of the
Yes.
loss of trust,
Yeah.
the fines you're going to get, lawsuits. So, Dale, I like the point you made earlier about like who deploys and who owns the agents. I actually heard this amazing theory the other day, or question. It was a discussion I was having. Like in the future, like Brett, you think about it. You're deploying agents now to run your business, right? Like who owns these agents? So like even from employees' perspective, right? Let's say you have agents to start doing things for you, right? Do you take them with you when you start a new job or you go to a new client? Do you bring your own agents? Or are they going to say, use ours? I think I would imagine people are going to want to bring their own, because like even like I look at my version of the AIs I use. I've trained them on how I write, how I think. They have all the material I've used. I mean, I'm getting such a higher quality output than I would have gotten a year ago when I started this
Yeah.
before I had trained them. So I would never want to lose that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like
You
'cause
build that sort of memory core,
Yeah.
right? It's a sort of memory brain, and then some coders will tell you there's a soul part to all of this, right?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
I don't know if I agree with that, but so Dale, your point about the companies, like from a brand perspective, I think you would want to own the agents, right? Why would you use Why would you use the vendors?
I don't think you would, because I think that I think you would want to own those, and like I said, I don't really know. I mean, think about. Let me answer your first question. First of all, if you're an employee and you have an employment agreement with a company, I promise you that in that agreement it says that company owns all IP you create.
Everything you
and
create,
all
100%.
intellectual
Yep.
property, which includes
Yep.
wherever it's
Right.
distributed or managed.
Yeah,
It
so no
doesn't
work.
matter.
We have to use work mandated like in approved versions, like within our firewall that they're containerized. So we have to use this. That's non-negotiable. Yeah, I think most companies like that. But like my outside of work stuff, right? I mean, like it would be nice to be able to bring your own agents in, but that's not happening now. But yeah, keep going. To cut you off.
Well, I was just going to say, so I'm not sure that you would bring them in unless that you would license them, right? If somebody wanted to license them from you, then sure, why not, right? Because maybe you created an agent that does a really unique thing, and it's high value and fast to implement, time to value, and all that kind of stuff. And I own that. But if you developed it on a company's time and resource, then they own it. So that's just kind of a thing. Please.
Sorry.
No,
Yeah,
please.
so it sounds like you guys are definitely not adopting the high touch model, right? Which I think Rio in his article talked about the agentic control plane. You're more of the what I think you called, Rio, the intelligent marketing platform, which is a bit more like treasure data, which the CDP sort of evolves upward. It absorbs capabilities that were historically.
It's a more IT centric model.
Yeah, the capabilities were scattered, but it's not quite as monolithic as sort of the Adobe Experience Cloud or the Salesforces or the Oracles. But you centralize a lot of those core functions in one place, so it's still platform centric, right? Is that the model that you guys are taking, you think, in terms of
Yeah,
being...
I think so, because, well, platform centric, let me think about that. So I would never sit here and say you should buy Redpoint to do all the things and we'll do everything that Adobe does. That's just stupid, right?
Yeah.
And same with Salesforce. Keep in mind too that each of those companies have only ever developed one product. They bought everything else. So
Yep.
so what I what I would say is, if you have those things, some of those products, and you need what I have, I can work with that, right?
Yeah.
I can run in any data environment. I can run in any cloud. I have, we work with customers who use AWS, Google, and Azure. We have Snowflake. We have Databricks. We've got SQL Server. We work in those environments because one of the things about us, and kind of go back to the moat thing, I can still run on premise. Right. And that's a big advantage for me in healthcare and in regulated industries. Right. I can also offer that as a SaaS, but then it's kind of like, are you guys sure you want to do that? Because now you're replicating data. Why are you doing that? And I can operate it as a data in place where I run the application, because most companies, when it comes right down to it, there's not a lot of value for them to run an application, right? So if I run the application, and now all of our software is containerized, and we went all in on Kubernetes, and even our big on-premise customers, they're using Kubernetes and containers and all that kind of stuff. So that all works really well. But I can run that application for them, and the data can stay with them. You got to process the data. Everyone that says they got zero copy data, I don't even understand how that could possibly be. But you would encrypt the data, send it to me, decrypt, process, encrypt, send it back, do your thing with it. I don't store your data. That's different than a SaaS that stores your data. The challenge that I see, and we're not this, right? If you look at the so-called platforms, and if it's let's say Salesforce, well, then you're buying into what Salesforce is doing, and then I don't understand exactly how AI works then, because the point of AI is to have access across the enterprise to the data. Just the example that I gave you. I want to go to the PIMs,
no matter where it lives.
I want to go to the audience. I want to go create, right? If that's an agent that's doing that. Well, okay, so is all my data in Salesforce, or just some of my data in Salesforce? And then what does that traffic look like? And then what is out there, and what kind of vendor lock-in? Because this whole AI thing, by the way, there is a big surprise coming for everybody about how expensive this is going to be. Yeah. Big surprise.
The tokenization.
Yeah, they're getting the bills now.
$20,000 I just spent on tokens this month.
Yeah, Claude cost me $200.
Yeah, for something that's not even in production, for a bunch of experimentation, you get $1 million bill. Yeah.
Right. So what happens then? And what happens when I'm locked in and the prices start to go up on me? Right. So
so platform lock-in's a huge challenge.
Huge challenge, right? Yeah. Huge challenge. And that's why I don't know if I want to be a platform the way that all those negative things are, because I'd rather be part of the platform, the engines, because the platform provides the infrastructure for those engines to work. You can plug my engines in, you can build your own agents, you can use a UI. And remember, not everybody's going to use there'll be people who are using the web UI, there'll be people who are using client server applications still, there'll be people who are using the agents. So my goal is to be able to support any and all those interfaces, if you will, but not to build all those interfaces. Yeah. I can't, I don't know how anybody does that.
It sounds like a composable model.
It is. I think composability, I always I scoffed at that a bit at first, just because, it's my nature. But but if you kind of think about composability, I thought, okay, well, that's just another term for people who cannot work, who can't do certain things. Well, I'm composable. It's just like, reverse ETL.
Yeah.
Think about
it's like a counter positioning. I can't do this, but I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so reverse ETL, how does that work? Do you actually reverse the ETL, the transformations? Well, no, all it is you don't have that capability. So the reverse ETL part of that is you expect someone else to provide that. And then you can create a segment out of that. But if someone else isn't giving great golden records with pristine data, your software ain't going to do crap. Right. So, no, I embrace composability, and I actually think that smart people that I like to work with at my customers, they are not afraid of that. And they're not afraid to say, no, it doesn't make sense for me to go all in on Salesforce or Adobe. Adobe's they got this great content thing. I'm buying that. I'm going to use that. But, I still think, kind of back on the quadrants, I think that the people who use the quadrants are organizations where procurement is driving the buying process,
totally.
and they want the top 4 or 5, whatever it is.
Procurement always asks for the quadrant. They always
and Rio, we talked about with
procurement
Matthew.
People aren't responsible for the results.
Yeah,
really.
Well, and they also don't understand the tech for the ecosystem in general. And if you're out there talking in the ecosystem, talking to the technical people, you will have an inherent understanding. And it's up to the CMOs and others that are using these tools to have that level of knowledge versus just allowing procurement to run a vendor selection process. Because
I think it depends the organization, right? I mean, there will be some where the procurement advises, right? And it will be, I've had vendors where procurement actually makes the decisions. I think that's insane, right? I think it actually creates more problems. And in media business, which I've spent a lot of my career in, right? I mean, I think that the big complaint is now it's just the race to the bottom. And if you just evaluating based on CPMs for major pubs, I mean,
or just based on price in general, right?
Yeah,
they've got KPIs that are drive down price, but they're not going to fully understand the nuances of what you're losing from a capability perspective, et cetera. So.
Well, and look, you can make an evaluation if you've got a whole bunch of criteria, in which people do. They've got all this selection stuff, and then they weight them, and they do this, and they was, okay, this is 2 times 3 because it's importance and all this kind of stuff. You can manipulate any model, right? You can manipulate.
You get the result you want. Yeah,
exactly. To get the answer you want. I reverse engineered the Gartner model on the scoring, and I reverse engineer the Forrester model on the scoring. I understand where the models are. I understand what they put the weight on, and it's really, really simple. But then the real question is, well, why did you rate me a 4 out of 5 here, but a 2 out of 5 here? Interesting. Oh, look at this. Look what that 2 does versus the 4. It drops you down.
If you made that a 3 or 4, yeah. I mean, and like you made, and you could, it's totally subjective, right? So,
right. Yeah. So that's the problem with all those things, and that's the problem that I think that's the challenge that procurement has with being in that.
Well, how do you help brands then? I mean, like if there's so much confusion, procurement's driving a lot of this. They don't know what they're doing. And to your point earlier, a lot of some clients are very well informed, but some are less so. And a lot of marketers now are maybe less technical. So how do you help inform the buyers about how to make these decisions on what they should do? What's your approach?
Yeah. So first of all, I would not say that they don't know what they're doing. I just want to be clear, right?
Well, you wouldn't want to say that to them, whether or not you believe that or not.
Right. There are people who know what they're doing. But I'll tell you what, the people that I see having the most success, whether they're a smaller company or a larger company, are the people who are from Missouri. Show me, right? They have the Missouri mindset. I don't mean literally from Missouri, but it's that show me. And what I always tell everybody is, give us a set of use cases.
You're probably like fried ravioli too then, right?
Yeah, but give us the easy ones.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard that, the Missouri mindset. I mean, I was born in St. Louis, Missouri.
It's a show me state. It's look at their license.
Good barbecue. Very good barbecue.
Very good barbecue.
It says show me, right?
Yeah.
So if you, but do the easy stuff, do the medium stuff, and put some things in there that you think you might want to do, or things that you think will be hard to do, and then have the vendors show you how they would do that. And when they do that, chances are I'm going to win.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of your success hinges on it's correct. You guys are doing data collection, right? Data preparation, for compliance and use case readiness, right? A lot of that
segmentation,
right? That's very hard to do, to your point, especially in heavily regulated industries.
And what about the third one's decisioning? So I guess, is that the third one, the decisioning engine? Is that something, one of your engines too, or is that something to be outside?
We used to do that, but I concluded a couple of years ago that it's folly for us to try to do that, because I think there are people who do that better, right? Now we do. Let me caveat that a bit. We do real-time decisioning. If you think about orchestration, right? There's outbound orchestration, which is asynchronous. I send an email and I wait.
Yep.
Then there's synchronous. And when somebody comes inbound, call center, website, whatever that synchronous activity is, there we have a decisioning engine that we use to drive next best actions.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But the decisioning that I'm talking about, this analytics capability, where you're a Tableau or you have that kind of capability, right? Well, why would I ever replicate that? Right.
Yeah.
And Tableau will be like everybody else. So they're probably using machine learning. They're probably what we did, because we went down some of these paths, is we figured out how all this stuff works. And then what we did is we figured out how to ring fence what we're doing and ring fence what those other things do. And then we said, what's inside their ring fence, we're not going to do, and we're not going to position it as that, because the worst thing, in my opinion, you can do in a sales situation is make a claim about how
That you
you
can't
do
back up.
something.
Yeah.
And someone is sitting there and going, I've been using Tableau for 15 years. I'll tell you whether you can do that or not, right? So it's just, so why would you go down that path? It's stupid.
Yeah.
So what,
And
right?
to me, that's a bit more like passive dashboarding versus
Well,
next
it
best
is,
action, which is a bit more predictive.
unless you get bi-directional capability in there, and that information is then being fed back into the engines.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it's
So
almost
that
as
that data, now the
exhaust to help
data's
the
sitting there
yeah.
and it's available, and now someone comes in a synchronous way, and you're trying to drive decisioning. You might want those insights out of the analytics. Those people are doing
It
something,
might change your
right?
segmentation schema, your audience target,
Yep.
your channel
Yep.
Execution.
It's
Yeah,
data, right?
it's data.
Analytics are nothing more than data that's been thought through, right? That's what it is. So, yep.
Yeah. And so you guys are focused more on that next best action versus sort of a full sort of analytics tool that would, dashboard and do all the sort
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
right?
Because there just are better products out there, right? And we can work with, Sigma has a great product, right?
Yeah.
Easy to use.
Does that lead down the path of orchestration? As you start, it's sort of, your next best plus, future actions, whether it's targets or
Could be.
channels. Yeah.
Could be. Yep. Because one of
Yeah.
the things that, go ahead.
Yeah, I
Pardon?
said next best action, Dale. It's one of those. I think it's another term that like it can mean different things,
It can
right?
be.
It could mean
Yep.
something really basic like contact center. You're just giving like recommendations, like you're telling like 3 things you could possibly say, or here's the group, or here's a high risk customer that might churn, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that could be considered next best action, or it could be like a multi-channel orchestration where it's deciding what channels to
Yeah.
engage in, it's deciding what messages, even what content.
Yeah.
I mean, which is much harder to do. So go ahead, I cut you off.
No, I was going to make that point. I mean, it depends on what you mean by that, right? But
Yeah.
so no, come back to the point. I disagree with that analytics. Let me think about this for a second. I disagree that analytics, the way I'm thinking about analytics, should be part of a CDP. I don't get it. I don't, however, disagree that, and no one is talking, they don't talk about it like this, that the results of that work that those people do, because there are a lot of smart people that are, working with that stuff, right? I want those results fed back into my engine so that I can put that in the golden record, so that when somebody comes in or I'm going to push a campaign out, I want all the data I always use it. I want to know everything that's knowable about a person or a business. That's what I want. Now, whether you achieve that or not is to be determined. But if you have that mindset, then you have to look at what does it cost to get that, and is it worth it? What's the trade-off, right? It's just like AI. If I can improve, if I can improve my segments by 1%, right? Is using the cost of a large language model to drive that through AI, is there a payoff there? If, however, I improve my data security by 1% by using AI, that might be worth a lot, because it might be the difference between staying in business and going under, right? So I kind of think it's like that too. It's like people need to understand the cost benefit of all these things, because we are really early in this. And I just think it's going to cost a lot. So, any other analytics that can be done to help get a better result will help drive a higher value, theoretically, right? To maybe offset some of those costs. I mean, it's a model, right? And you got to it's a business model. So you got to kind of figure all that out. But yeah, that's my view of why I think that's an important thing, but why we're not going to do it, why we're not doing it.
So do you think to conclude all of this, do you think CDP remains a standalone category?
No, I don't know.
Should
I
it?
don't know. I don't
Should
really,
it?
I don't really care if it does. We'll just find another category to belong to or
Yeah,
something.
it's sort of an inside-out view of the world versus
Yeah,
an outside-in client use
yeah,
case view.
the RFPs that we get today are still for CDP. The vast
Yeah,
majority of RFPs are for CDP. When we go
yeah,
talk to customers, though, or prospects, everybody wants to talk about AI-ready data. Everybody wants to talk about, tell me about data readiness. How do I have to think about that? What does that mean? What is that going to cost me? And then you get into a discussion, right? What are you trying to do? Right. And so I think that the idea of data, what was old is new again. I think that we kind of lost for us data guys. We kind of got lost for a few years because it was the easy buttons and the gee whizzes and, all these things and this cool stuff and these great interfaces and, your interface should be that. Well, we don't do that. So now it's data, right? Now everyone's going to sit here and say, if I'm doing all this spending to put AI and to do these things, I better be getting a better result. And the result does not come from building a faster audience. It comes from having better data to drive a better audience, to drive a better
Yeah,
outcome.
Dale, that's a really
Yeah.
good point. Actually, I think that like maybe the category evolves instead of like data prep and readiness and normalization for activation, it becomes data prep and readiness and like normalization and for AI use cases, which could be activation, it could be lots of things, right? But I think as we go to something, so that's kind of where that's a great point. I've heard that from a bunch of other vendors too. That's where they see things going. So
Yeah. So we're all brilliant.
So where so it was great discussion. See, we're right probably around time, but on that brilliance, like how if someone wants to get a hold of you, Dale, to chat more, to learn about Redpoint, to find about some of your things you're working on, like
Redpointglobal.com. Go to
okay,
redpointglobal.com, right? And I don't know. I don't know if my cell phone is on our website or not, but based on the calls I get, it must be someplace that I've been.
I
But
hope you're not answering all those calls that just come
oh my
randomly
God.
into your mobile phone.
I'm actually contemplating getting a different phone number.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But no, and I appreciate the question. But we'd love to talk to you. The thing that I learned a long time ago, it's a lot easier just to be honest, tell people what you can do. You got to find out what they're going to do, and then does this make sense or not? And every time in my career that I've tried to sell something that did not make sense, or that we were going to have to do something to turn ourselves inside out to do it, I've regretted the day. So I have just found that, having the conversation and,
Go to market with the truth that's tied to a client need.
yeah,
But there is the innovator's dilemma, right?
there
That if
is.
you're if you're too tied to the client need, the client can drive you out of business.
That's right. That's right.
Because they don't see
Yeah.
what's, they're not going to see that innovation that's going to change things in 6 months or a year from now. They just
Right.
want you to solve their current use case. So
Yeah.
I always find that's the biggest challenge in sort of tech SaaS is how do you make the client happy, but not allow the client to sort of prevent your innovation life cycles,
Yeah.
right? And to help, because you're going to pitch stuff that may not be built yet because you see what's going to happen in the 6 months that your client doesn't see, right? And before you know it, you're looking, in the rearview mirror at some serious competitors that are going to disrupt you. That's the
Well, that's
dilemma,
right. And you're always at that risk, I guess. And so, it's just life. But we work with our clients because they have needs, and we work, their needs in. And but the one thing that we do that helps us a lot is, we don't have multiple versions of our code. If you want me to put it in the software, then it becomes available for everybody. If you don't want that, then you can just use the SDK and you can build it yourself. You can hire us to build it for you, or something, my services people, or you can hire one of our partners to build it for you.
Yeah.
But I won't maintain it, and I won't guarantee that it'll work because
you open source it for those clients that have like some sort of custom code request.
If that's what they want.
Capability request. Yeah.
Right.
or new feature, yeah.
Yep.
Well, this has been great, Dale. Thanks. It's great to hear your story. From the very beginnings of this space.
The first CDP sale, we have it on record here.
We have it on record on Signal and Noise. So thanks for joining us, everybody that's listened all the way through. Thanks for listening all the way through. You can listen to us watch us on YouTube, listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.